Backstage, the air felt heavy, thick with whispers and humming lights, the kind of silence that presses against the chest and makes every breath feel louder than it should. The boy from Cebu stood alone near a cold concrete wall, his bare feet resting on the smooth floor that still carried the vibration of performances before him. His jeans were faded to a dull blue, frayed at the knees, and his shirt hung loosely on his thin frame, washed so many times that its original color had long been forgotten. In his hands, he held a guitar that looked older than he was, its body scratched and cracked, the strings slightly rusted but carefully cleaned, as if it were the most valuable thing he owned, because it was. He rubbed his thumb gently across the neck of the guitar, not to play, but to calm himself. His hands trembled despite his effort to stay still. Around him, other contestants laughed nervously, adjusting microphones, rehearsing lines, surrounded by family members and coaches. He had come alone. No one held his shoulder or whispered words of encouragement. The only voice he carried with him was his mother's, echoing in his mind, reminding him to sing with honesty, even if his knees shook. His thoughts drifted back to the narrow streets of Cebu City, where neon signs flickered above small food stalls and the smell of fried bananas mixed with sea air. He remembered standing there at night, singing Hotel California for passing strangers, hoping someone would stop, hoping the coins dropped into his worn cap would be enough for rice the next day. Rain had soaked his clothes more times than he could count, but he had kept singing, because singing was the only thing that made the hunger feel smaller. A stage assistant called his number. The sound snapped him back to the present. His heart began to pound so hard it felt like it might escape his chest. For a moment, fear tightened his throat and doubt whispered that he did not belong here, that this stage was too bright, too big for someone like him. He looked down at his bare feet, then at his guitar, and took a slow breath. This was not just a performance. This was every night he had sung under streetlights, every dream he had carried through exhaustion and hunger. With one final breath, he stepped forward, carrying his past with him toward the stage where everything might change. The moment he stepped onto the stage, the lights poured down on him like a sudden sunrise, blinding and overwhelming. The massive auditorium of Ireland's Got Talent stretched out before him, row after row of faces fading into darkness beyond the glow of the spotlights. For a heartbeat, he stood frozen, the echo of his footsteps still hanging in the air. He tightened his grip on the guitar, feeling the rough wood under his fingers, grounding himself in something familiar. The judges watched closely, curiosity mixed with doubt, their expressions calm but unreadable. He lowered himself onto the stool and adjusted the microphone with careful hands. When his fingers brushed the strings, a soft, uncertain chord filled the room. Then he began to sing. The first line of Hotel California came out fragile, almost broken, his voice trembling as if it might disappear at any moment. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats, unsure of what to expect. But then something changed. His voice steadied, deepened, carrying a weight that could not be taught or rehearsed. It was the sound of long nights, empty stomachs, and dreams held together by stubborn hope. As the melody grew stronger, the room began to lean toward him. The judges exchanged quick glances. One of them slowly sat forward, elbows resting on the desk, eyes widening as if trying to understand what they were hearing. Another judge's confident smile faded, replaced by a look of pure focus. The female judge pressed her lips together, her eyes glistening, already fighting tears. When he reached the chorus, his voice soared, filling every corner of the theater. It wasn't perfect in the technical sense, but it was real, raw, and impossible to ignore. Each note seemed to carry a piece of his life, street corners lit by broken lamps, coins clinking softly into his cap, his mother waiting at home with tired eyes and quiet prayers. The audience sat in stunned silence, afraid that even a breath might break the spell. The camera caught the judge's hands trembling slightly. One wiped his face quickly, hoping no one noticed. Another shook his head in disbelief, whispering something under his breath. The boy closed his eyes as he sang, no longer seeing the judges or the crowd, only the memories that had shaped him. By the time he reached the final line, his voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from emotion too heavy to contain. The room felt different now, charged with something fragile and powerful, as if everyone present knew they were witnessing more than a song. The final note hung in the air, trembling softly as it faded into silence. For a moment that felt endless, no one moved. The boy remained seated, his hands resting on the guitar, his chest rising and falling as he tried to steady his breath. His eyes stayed closed, as if opening them too soon might shatter whatever fragile miracle had just occurred. The vast theater, once buzzing with anticipation, was now completely still, suspended in that rare space between sound and meaning. Then the silence broke. A single clap echoed through the room, followed by another, and then a sudden explosion of applause that surged like a wave. The audience rose to their feet, cheering, shouting, some wiping their eyes openly without shame. The noise hit the boy all at once, overwhelming and unreal. His shoulders began to shake as tears spilled down his face, carving clean lines through the dust and sweat of the performance. He bowed his head, gripping the guitar as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. At the judges' table, emotion spilled over without restraint. One judge stood abruptly, clapping above his head, his face red and wet with tears he made no attempt to hide. Another covered his mouth with trembling hands, shaking his head again and again in disbelief, as though words had completely failed him. The female judge's eyes were full now, tears streaming freely as she pressed her hand to her chest, visibly moved beyond anything she had expected to feel. When the applause softened enough for voices to be heard, one judge leaned toward the microphone, his voice unsteady. He spoke about courage, about truth, about how this was not just a performance but a life laid bare in song. As he spoke, the boy slid from the stool and dropped to his knees on the stage, overcome by emotion. He pressed his forehead to the floor, sobbing quietly, years of struggle pouring out in a single release. Suddenly, a sharp golden light burst across the stage. Gasps rippled through the audience as golden confetti rained down, spinning through the air like falling stars. The golden buzzer had been pressed. The crowd erupted again, louder than before, chanting and cheering as the boy looked up in disbelief, his eyes wide, his mouth trembling between laughter and tears. He stood slowly, bathed in gold, shaking as he realized what this moment meant. Somewhere far away, on a quiet street in Cebu, the life he had known began to fade behind him. In its place rose something new, hope, possibility, and a future no longer limited by hunger or fear. That night, a poor boy did more than win applause. He rewrote his destiny, and everyone in the room knew they would never forget his name.